Hey, how's it going? So I just want to say before we get started, because we've got a lot of really fun demos I want to show you, and we've got about 20 minutes. And this is normally an hour, but it's going to be super fast, so you're going to love it. I just want to say this is really a dream come true to be here at All Things Open. I went to North Carolina State. Any NC State folks here? Yeah! Make a round of applause for yourself. Go Pack, baby. And for UNC and all the other schools, much love as well, of course. But it's just a dream because I'd been applying for this conference for years as a student, and now I've been working in the open source space for a while at Red Hat because I've always loved Linux. I've always loved these technologies. And to be here with you guys is just a real honor. So thanks to everyone working, the volunteers, the organizers. I mean, I really appreciate y'all. Thanks so much. And now, to get to the presentation, since we've got a lot of fun stuff to get through, I've got live demos, I've got a game that we're all going to play. If anyone likes Blackjack with AI, you're going to love it. And as we get started, I mean, everyone's using AI in some form or another. Like, who here is vibe coding, as an example? Okay, a lot of vibers here. If you're not vibe coding yet, you probably will be soon. It's crazy. It'll change your mind. I've been getting no sleep. But we're vibe coding, we're using RAG, we're working with all types of data types with LLMs or AI models in general. But there's a trend happening recently, which is local AI, or local llama, as some people call it, where instead of paying for costly APIs and sending our data to a third-party service, we're running these models locally on our device where we can tinker, we can run these things on localhost. And it's just a really cool experience because why send your data to someone else, and why pay for this service if you could run this on your own hardware, even a Raspberry Pi? So today you're going to learn about what local LLMs are, how to run them, how to scale things up, and maybe even build some cool agentic features in the end of the demo if we have some time. Hi, my name is Cedric, though. I am an open source engineer and advocate at Red Hat. I've been working on the Podman team for a while now. I also work with LLMs. You'll see how they kind of work together at the end of the presentation. And I'm going to share what I've learned from working with these LLMs and show you some open source tools that you can use today to work with LLMs and build apps with LLMs. So we've got a lot to cover today. The first point is, yes, you can run your own LLMs, and every leading lab out there, including Microsoft, Google, and a wide variety of others, have their own open source versions of their models that you can download. We're going to take a look at some of the tools that you can use to run these, maybe in a local desktop environment, or scale this up on Linux or Kubernetes. And then you're also going to help or learn how to select the right model. So there's over 2 million models if you go to Hugging Face/models right now. So I'm going to help you to kind of determine which one is best for your use case. And then finally, of course, as a developer, integrate your data, which maybe it's PDFs or maybe it's code or something else, into the context window of that LLM. And if you'd like to follow along, because we've got a lot of slides, I have this QR code to a Google Slides link. And you can see the copy of all these slides to consult later, because we'll go over a lot of different topics and a lot of different tools. So the presentation is going to cover 3 different demos: serving a model, understanding that Swagger endpoint, so you have understanding of the API for these LLMs. We're going to talk about code assistance, because vibe coding is not as cheap as I wish it was, right? I can run up an $80 bill in just an hour if I'm vibe coding. And then we're going to talk about, hey, now that we have these LLMs running, how do we add features to them in applications? So embed them in applications as microservices, and then add things like MCP and agentic functionality. So who's ready to get started? Woo! Awesome. OK, we're going to have a lot of fun. The first part is, I talked about that trend. A lot of people are running their own AI models. This has happened last year and specifically this year. It's been crazy. The biggest thing is convenience and simplicity. If I have a model file on my own machine, and I can run that using an inference server or a runtime like Ollama, for example, well, then I can run everything against localhost. I don't need to have some type of token. I can do this in a disconnected environment, so I could turn off my Wi-Fi and still use that LLM. And I can easily integrate this into a lot of other applications, right? As easy as I could spin up a MySQL or MongoDB database in a container, I can do the same thing with the LLM as a service on my machine as well, which is really nice. And then for enterprises, I mean, I think about this all day. There's a lot of organizations that just can't send their data to a ChatGPT. They can't send it outside because of HIPAA or all these other AI EU regulations. And so running their own models is something that they seriously have to consider now. If we think about the stack for all of these, AI applications, it can get quite overwhelming. And this was just last year. for the machine learning and AI data landscape. And you probably might feel like this sometimes, where you're overwhelmed by all the news, all the technologies coming out, and I'm going to show you just a few simple tools today so that you're not in the weeds of AI, kind of like this, trying to figure out how the runtime works with your prompt template and why you're getting jargon out of your LLM. So I'm going to help you fix all of that and do this all with open source technology. So who here knows what game this is by chance? Nice, my people, my people. I grew up on this. This is Super Smash Bros. I think this is for the Wii, which, you know, it's debated which one the best is. But in this game, you have all the characters, and these characters have different powers, right? So, you know, Kirby's just going to keep jumping around the map. Samus has a blaster. And in the AI space, things are quite similar because all of these tools and technologies can be used in different ways. For example, Ollama is great to start developing and testing against, but it doesn't very well scale up for multi-nodes and multi-clusters so that you have lots of users, right? Or Hugging Face is a great AI ecosystem to pull models from. And so the first tool that people commonly take a look at with local LLMs is Ollama. So it was started by a former Docker PM. That's why you have the concept of a model file. You also have, you know, Docker pool would be a Ollama pool, and then run that model as well. So it's a quick and easy way to get set up with using local LLMs. But there are some limitations that you might run into. And when you need to scale up, we have to look at other tools like SGLang or specifically VLLM. So while Ollama and other tools are made for kind of, you know, simple setups like this, VLLM is something that I would run on my production cluster on a you know, a VM that has connections to like an A100 or something like that, and it better utilizes my GPU's VRAM. So that virtual memory, it treats it kind of in sequential blocks and puts them together so that these requests can be more effectively batched together. So we use this in Kubernetes all the time, and this is another tool that you'll scale up to. Now, at Red Hat, we got a lot of open source projects. Podman, namely, is one of them. And with Podman, you can use something called Ramalama to run models in a container. So you could do this in Docker as well. But this frees you from the limitations of, hey, I want to run this model, but it requires Python 3.9 and this specific version of transformers and all of these different dependencies. So we just put this in a container, and you can run it like that as well. The tool I'll be using today is part of Podman. It's called the AI Lab. So this is a CNCF project that allows me to one-click run a model, import one maybe from Hugging Face, but also have a Swagger API, and then build out applications from there. So we have some tools here to build applications, but I'm going to take a look at the models really quickly. Because in the open source space, we've really seen an explosion since 2023, right? So the thing is, we've got that explosion, but there's a lot of choices, right? I'll use another video game, for example, Mario Kart, to specify, hey, different models have different capabilities. There's no one size fits all. So if you're looking for reasoning tasks, say, for example, I need you to go through the spreadsheets of past financial records and make some observations and maybe do a tool call to email that person, you could use DeepSeek. Or Granite is a model from IBM that's typically well-functioning for RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. Not all models are the same, though, right? Because some are specifically for text. I'll show you another demo, for example, of one that's not specifically for text. So I'll use that Ramalama tool, and I'm going to serve something called small VLM. So this is a Hugging Face model. And you'll see right here, we just loaded it into my machine's VRAM. And I'll go to small VLM. And what we're going to do is point to that model that's running on 8089. We're saying, what do you see? And over here, we can see that all this information is being passed to that model that's running locally. So that image is being encoded base64, sent to the model. We get that response back in text. So there's different types of models that we can use. But again, all of this is running locally. So let's head back over here, because if you're looking on Hugging Face, you might be confused. How do I pick the model? Why are there so many different names and abbreviations? Well, base is a model as it's been released. It hasn't been instructed to do questioning and answering. So you'll need something that's called instruct. And there's something called mixture of experts, which kind of splits this up and lets you run models more efficiently. But let's say you want something that's really large, like a DeepSeek or a huge llama model, right? They say bigger is always better, but what happens when your laptop is on fire or you need something incredibly large in order to run these models? Well, if you've used local models before, I'm going to introduce you to a topic called quantization. This, essentially what it does is takes a model released by Meta, for example, and it compresses the actual parameters in numerical precision. So it applies a machine learning algorithm to take it from, for example, floating point 32 to integer 8. And this reduces the memory footprint. So you could see, for example, a 2 to 3 times speed up on inference while only needing half of the amount of GPUs because the model size is smaller. So if you're interested in this, we also have this QR code for a collection of pre-optimized models so that you can save on the hardware you need to run an LLM while only sacrificing less than 1%, for example, of the accuracy of a model. So this will take you to Hugging Face, and we've got models that we've taken our GPUs and we've quantized and compressed these models for you so that you can run them on less hardware, right? Because it's very difficult to get a GPU these days. Trust me, I'm on Amazon just refreshing all the time. But let's say we've taken a look at the inference runtimes. We've taken a look at models that you can run. The last thing I want to show you is the actual use cases, right? That's what we're all here for. What about our data? Because if we're not solving a problem with AI, what are we doing, right? So let's start to integrate this with our unique data. The first thing we're going to take a look at is data interfaces. So we're going to use these open source tools, specifically Anything LLM, to work with PDFs. Then we're going to do some vibe coding. Unfortunately, I don't have $200 a month to spend on a Claude Code subscription, so I'm just going to show you how to do this with a local model using a tool called actually RuCode. And then finally, we're going to build some apps that have agentic functionality from our local machine and put them on Kubernetes in 7 minutes. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, if you're interested in the repository, this is where we're going to have all the code. You can also check this at the slides that I'll have at the end. But we're going to go through, first off, this model serving in RAG. Then we're going to go, again, to code assistance. And then we'll end up in the development flow of using an LLM to build out those cool features. We ready to go? Woo, let's do it. Let's do it. All right, so let's get started. I showed you a couple tools at the beginning for serving models. So you could use that Ramalama tool, right? You could use Olama. All of these are going to provide the same API endpoint because we're modeling off of the OpenAI API standard. So here I have this Podman desktop tool. So this is an extension of Podman that lets you view your containers and also lets you view your Kubernetes environment. And what I have down here is this AI lab. So this allows me to download and run these models. So the one I'm going to use today is Qwen 4 billion parameters. And I'm going to run this specifically as a container and expose the port 8000. So this is where I'm going to make the calls to from my application. And actually, I can actually see this if I open up the Swagger docs, that if I go over to completions and say, hey, what's the capital of France? Well, we get the result. The capital of France is Paris. But this is really nice if you're trying to understand, hey, what can I do and what calls can I make to a model, right? So we've got this running on port 8000. And what I'm going to come back here is this Anything LLM to work with my docs. So if I ask a question, let's say, who's speaking at, and I know this is quite small, all things open, right? A model wasn't trained on this data. It doesn't have access to this real-time information. So what I'm doing with Anything LLM, this is an open source project, is uploading a PDF of who's speaking. And then if we ask that same question with that PDF, this is handling all of the kind of grunt work to build a RAG application. So I took that PDF, automatically was able to chunk it, embed it into a vector database, and when I ask this question, it's going by semantic search to that vector database and pulling the relevant chunks, right? So if I talk about those chunks, I really mean it's chunks. It's a chunk of text right here. So when you're building out a RAG app, this is what you see typically. But we were able to do this all automatically. And with Anything LLM, this is a great way to start working with your PDFs, your CSVs, all of your internal data, right? And this is using that local LLM. If I go over here, we can see it's using that local host. We can provide, hey, how many tokens that we want to use. The vector database, for example, if we want to switch that out. The embedding LLM, so we could use something from Hugging Face or a service. The splitting, so if we want to take 1,000 tokens and split it, that's one chunk. And so this kind of sets up everything for you, and it's a great way to get started. But we're all developers, right? This is the developer room. So what I'm going to come over here to show you is an example of vibe coding. So I have something called RuCode, and this is an open source project that allows me to connect to an LLM, whether it's hosted by someone else or hosted by myself, and do inline edits into my IDE, which is really nice. So I've got this example code that I want to show you really quickly. And we're using a local model, so it's that Qwen 4B. And I'm just going to ask a simple question, so I'll copy this in, just review this specific code. And with this extension, I've got a lot of different modes to architect, to implement, and also to debug. So get essentially pipe the output from the terminal straight into this assistant. And what's really cool here is I could tag, for example, specifically a file or maybe a Git commit, or, an issue, and have the LLM actually go out and solve this and push that up to the repository, which is really cool. So you'll see I'm making this request to that model, and we're saying, hey, I'm going to start taking a look at this. But what's really cool, and this is the next step because it's 2025, is that I can start to use MCP servers. So MCP is just a way to connect to our data sources, whether it's a database or it's a OneDrive or Google Drive or something like that. A lot of developers these days are using something called Context 7, which will provide the documentation of, say, for example, Node.js 22 into the context of the LLM so it has that up-to-date information. So think of RAG on steroids, right? So we can dynamically pull that in. Now, I also want to show you that you don't have to use just local models with extensions like this. I actually have something which is a Llama 4 that's hosted remotely. And so I can say, for example, run this on a cluster that I might have access to that has a GPU. And I could also go back here. And so let's go and start the chat window again. I'll say, hey, review this example code. And then also use context 7 MCP. So now we're going to say, hey, use this MCP server. Yes, review the code. And then, hey, I want you to use the MCP server for this library fast API. So it's really cool that you can dynamically pull in this information as you're going and doing these inline edits using a local model. So nothing is leaving my setup that I've created, either on my machine or using a VM that I'm connected to as well. So pretty cool there. Now, I've got just a few minutes left, and I want to make it really fun. So I've got one cool final demo for you, which is a little bit of agentic AI with a local model. So what I have here that's running in containers already is my little blackjack game. So this is a blackjack with AI game that is using a local model to say, hey, should I hit or should I stand, right? So if I would ask AI, hopefully it would say hit, right? What I've done for you guys is I've containerized this and put this on a Kubernetes environment so that we could all use it, and then connected it to an MCP server that is Netlify right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this QR code with everybody, and I want you guys to try out the game, test your luck, and we're going to see this coming live on this MCP server, everyone's updates for their score. So hopefully this is big enough. And apologies if it doesn't work. Well, someone's already winning. OK. So cool. This is probably the biggest room of people that have ever played this game. So if it crashes, apologies. But it looks like it's holding up. If everyone's gotten to scan it, I'll show you what it looks like if you don't have your phone out. But who would hit and who would stand? What should we do? Hit. OK. People are saying hit. OK. Say what? And then I think stand. All right. Fingers crossed. Yes. Ooh. Free money for everybody. But if you were to ask AI, AI would also say, hey, you should hit, you should stand this. Well, I lost the money. Sorry, guys. But in the background, we're just using something like you could think LangChain or one of those orchestrators. Here I'm using LlamaStack. And you can see, well, after 30,000 lines pass through, that this is happening in real time, all of these tool calls and all of these completions. So it's pretty cool. We can take an application running locally and then scale that up and add some cool agentic features. So I hope you like the game. And just to kind of wrap things up, there's a lot of ways that you can use these local models. And actually, I'll show you one last thing. Since I have full control over the deployment of that model, if I go over here and I say, hey, in the past 24 hours, we can see that you guys have used the AI model 152 times, right? And I can kind of track this out. I can see, hey, what's the performance look like? Can I modify my application to use like prefix caching so I can cache all of the responses as well? And there's just a lot of things we can do with that. I'll also mention, if you are interested, these models are all just publicly available, so you can check out Red Hat on Hugging Face, really cool. And yeah, so for data interfaces with PDFs, for code assistance, vibe coding, and building apps, you can use all complete local LLMs. You can run them on your own device. And I think the future is really bright for open source AI. So I really appreciate your time. If everyone would be interested, I would like to just show my boss and probably my mom that I'm here. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I'll take a quick selfie. Cheers. All right, appreciate it, guys. At the Red Hat booth if y'all have any questions and we don't get to connect here. Thank you. Have a great day.